this is Roger Green, host of the Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast. This weekend, we are offering 5 conversations from episode 13, our preview of the upcoming Innovations in NAFLD Care Conference in Barcelona. And from the vault, we have conversation 24.4 from season 3, the last part of our wrap-up episode from the inaugural INCBCN conference last May. It's interesting to review what Jeff Lazarus and Jörn Schattenberg anticipated then as compared to what we discussed in previewing this year's conference. I start this conversation by asking Jeff Lazarus about the item on the day one agenda that is described as the Patient Organizations Roundtable with only one name below it. Jeff notes that this session will include Juan Mendive, a global leader in primary care for Wanco, along with various patient advocates discussing how they would like to be treated and evaluated frontline. Before we move on to day 2, Louise Campbell mentions she has learned in a recent conversation in Australia that prevalence of pancreatic cancer, which is linked to fatty liver, is growing rapidly there among women and men, and wonders how broadly obesity cancers will be discussed in this meeting. We then move on to day 2, which we start with Jeff Lazarus describing early presentations from Maru Rinella, Alina, Mazen, Noureddin, and some short abstract, followed by an industry roundtable and then treatment and care issues. Jeff expresses particular excitement about a debate on the question of whether being vegetarian will cure NAFLD. He goes on to describe the strong positions that the 2 faculty members take. He then goes on to describe the other major talks of the day: behaviorism, advances in drug therapy, which is Stephen Harrison's annual tour de force, and then a discussion of health equity. After reviewing the health equity session in some detail, Jeff and Jörn will move on to the wrap-up session, which all the panelists joke about. The laughter continues at the end of this discussion as Louise mentions how many vegetarians she has scanned with fatty liver, and I mentioned the idea of pastatarianism as being one way to get there. Eat a lot of pasta and processed flour and tell yourself you're doing better because you're not eating meat. The inaugural INCBCN conference was a truly innovative meeting concept that produced fantastic discussions, lessons, and insights. These conversations can tell you what to anticipate this year, so just sit back, listen, enjoy, learn, and when you're done, join the dialogue on our LinkedIn discussion group. So, Louise, Jeff, any other comments on the first couple of sessions? I guess it starts at 2 in the afternoon. On the academic portion starts at 2 in the afternoon. The sessions that you talked about, Jeff, take us to about 5. And then there's something without much information in it right now called a patient organization session. So I'm kind of wondering what that's... You did mention Juan Mendive, who will be one of the roundtable discussants, but what are you envisioning the session to be?
Jeff McIntyre.
So we wanted to talk about integrated care and the role, a little bit like we were talking about earlier today, Roger, that primary care is going to play in terms of addressing fatty liver disease, and not seeing this as one more thing, but seeing this as a facilitator to addressing so many other issues around non-communicable diseases, from diabetes to obesity. So we have Juan from Wanka representing primary care there, a few patient representatives who are going to discuss, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to your primary care doctor? Do you want to go to your specialist? And the jury's out. In other conditions, people with HIV often do want to go to a specialist. In some settings, people prefer to go to their community doctor. It can be a cost issue. It can be a convenience issue. It can be a familiarity issue. So we're going to close the day with that kind of roundtable discussion.
Great. So for those who don't know, because a lot of Americans will not, Wanka is an obesity organization, yeah?
The World Organization of Family Doctors. So this is the primary care organization. And Juan Mendive was asked to represent their European regional section on these fatty liver disease experts. It's a total coincidence that he happens to be from Barcelona. So when we wrote to Wanka and asked them to send someone to Wilton Park, it eventually ended up being Juan. And then I said, well, you're already in Barcelona. You got to come to the Barcelona meeting too. So that's how it happens.
Jörn Schattenberg.
And it nicely complements, the first session where we have the diabetes physicians. So it's a full spectrum of physicians.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about day 1, or shall we move on to day 2?
Louise Campbell.
I've got one comment about day 1 in relation to, I was having a health conversation in Australia earlier on this week, and the cancer one does interest me because the 4th leading cause of cancers, deaths in women in Australia is pancreatic cancer. It is now above liver cancer. And we know that obviously NAFLD and pancreatic cancer are linked, but I've always really seen pancreatic cancer as a rare cancer, but it is screaming up the mortality mortality rates. And I'm really interested in that session to see whether we link, because both pancreatic and liver cancer are some of the top cancer deaths for men in Australia as well. So I'm really interested to try and get into her session on that. And we don't really talk about pancreatic cancer in its linkage, but I was shocked to see how rapidly it is rising as a major cause of death for cancers in both men and women.
So with that, we'll just move on to day 2. And Jeff has provided a link that we will share with you folks. I guess that's for Wonka, right? Global Family Doctor. So will one of you please take us into day 2?
I'll be happy to start, and if you could supplement Jörn. When we start Saturday morning, not too early, but 9 o'clock, and we'll be looking at overcoming the challenges of diagnostics. So Dr. Maru Rinella, who's so well known and led the AASLD guidelines, will chair. Dr. Alina Allen from the Mayo Clinic will look at automation and artificial intelligence, MLA, some really interesting work she's doing. And Mazen Noureddin will look at bridging the gap between science and current care pathways. We'll have some abstracts, and then we'll move into an industry session, something we did last year as well, a chance to engage with industry. This is incredibly important. Everyone at the table here to discuss and move the field forward. So we'll have industry representatives, both from Madrigal, from NASH, from EcoSense, discussing, and then we'll go into treatment and care issues. Jörn will speak more to that, but what I'm also very excited about will be the debate on, is being vegetarian a cure for NAFLD? So Dr. Shira Zelber-Sagi from Israel and Dr. Camilla Hansen from here in Denmark are going to go for and against the proposition. They're both really well known in the field for their positions on meat consumption, diet, lifestyle interventions, and we'll have some discussion on what's it going to take in terms of what you eat to reduce the amount of fat in your liver. And then we'll have some discussions on behavioral interventions. Stephen Harrison will give his always amazing state-of-the-art talk on medical therapy. And then we'll move into both Stephen and I looking at health equity in fatty liver disease. And as you know, addressing disparities, which the Americans call it, and equity in Europe is such an important issue to me. How do we make sure that everyone who needs access to treatment and care, the system, is able to get it? So we have Dr. Zobair Younossi, who will also be discussing from payer perspectives, and my former postdoc, Dr. Juan Pericàs, looking at socioeconomic status in fatty liver disease. He led a really nice public health corner in the Journal of Hepatology recently and has been reviewing all of the literature around the world on socioeconomic status inequities and fatty liver disease. And then we'll move to Dr. Patrizia Carrieri, based in Marseille, Italian, who will look at NAFLD in women, risks, and interventions before Jörn and I move into wrapping up Saturday.
So first of all, Jeff, we're all hoping that there will be a major reveal as you and Jörn wrap up Saturday, because you have to live up to your reputation from last year.
Oh, don't worry about that, Roger. I hope Jörn is shaking over there, because I've been working on this literally since 20 minutes after the last one.
I'm stunned to hear that, Jeff. It's so unlike you. If you follow the podcast, then you know that in the interim, Mazen has dubbed Jörn Matt Damon. So you have lots of room to play here, my friend, and lots of directions to go in as far as that goes.
Just tell me it's not gold lame shorts with NASH printed across the rear end.
It is not, but I can tell you, even Mazen has to fear. You can ask Mazen the next time you speak to him what happened to his nice shoes at Wilton Park when we went up to see the sunrise. He didn't come down with them, let's put it that way.
I had a bit of a giggle when I looked at the programme on the can vegetarianism be the cure for NAFLD? Because if I had £1 for every vegetarian I've scanned with fatty liver disease, I would be probably better well off now by charging for that than and it's like, I can't possibly have fatty liver disease, I'm vegetarian and vegans, so that's going to entertain me. I'm looking forward to that one.
Let's take bets and see how the debate is going to be won.
When Louise raised this with me, I guess this morning, my comment was that I know a lot of people who I would describe as pastatarians. That's to say they're vegetarians, but they eat so much processed flour in different formats that they would do a lot better eating meat. So my guess is part of it might actually be not just do you eat meat or not, but what do you eat?
I think you're getting ahead of yourself, and that's what the debate's going to be about. So there'll be a lot of opinions in the room. You are what you eat.
Yeah, or what eats you. It depends upon exactly what kind of mood you're in on a given day. But yes, I like that.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the review section of the page from which you downloaded this conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. Next week, we may post our episode on Thursday to accommodate Jörn Schattenberg's schedule, returning from 2 major events in California in the presence of a strike in Germany. We've not locked down the topic yet, but the 2 we are considering are both quite important. Until then, stay safe, surf on. See you next week on the podcast. Bye-bye now.